Hello, I'm Erin Blaze. Welcome to The Truth About Real Estate. Today my guest is TARE Roberts, and we're going to talk about things that you need to know before you buy a home. TARE, you teach a class on home ownership. Could you tell me a little bit about the class?
Yes, I do that class through our agency, CMCA, Central Missouri Community Action. We cover an 8-county area, and I take the class into all 8 counties. It's a 12-hour course, and it's done in 3-hour sessions over a 4-week period. Tomorrow evening, we'll be doing our second week in Cooper County in our Boonville office. And we start with basics, talking about budgeting. Are you really ready to buy a home? Do you have the money saved? Those types of things. We talk about credit reports. We get copies of the credit reports. We learn how to read them. We learn how to raise our credit score. We learn how to get rid of some of that debt, and by putting those types of things into our budgets. So we kind of take the budgeting and the credit repair kind of goes hand in hand, and that's really what we touch on the first week. We then move on to having a home mortgage lender come in and talk to the group. They then learn different types of mortgages. They see what a loan mortgage application actually looks like. After that, we then have a real estate agent who comes in and explains to them the different types of agents. Also, again, we have a sample real estate contract that we go through in that session, so that all of that doesn't just absolutely scare them and scare them away when it comes time to start signing on the dotted line. We talk about home maintenance after the sale, the kinds of things that they need to do, how important it is that you continue your savings habit and your budgeting, so that you have a reserve account set up for maintenance and repairs and things that you might just want to do to the home.
Okay. If someone wants to take the class, how do they sign up for the class?
They just call our office. My office here in Columbia is located on Wilkes Boulevard. And they can just call that office. They can get in contact with our administrative offices, which is located on Providence. All they really need to do is look Central Missouri Community Action up in the phone book, call that number, and they'll be put in touch with me.
Okay, well that sounds easy. Well, let's talk about a little bit more in depth about some of the things that are covered. Since I'm a realtor, I don't get a lot of calls from people that aren't ready to buy houses. Lots of them are already ready. But what kinds of questions should people ask themselves to decide whether they're really ready for it or not?
Well, they need to stop and think, have they been in their job for 2 to 3 years? Are they stable in their job? Do they have money saved for a down payment and closing cost? Are they ready to deal with the maintenance and the repairs? When you're used to renting, it's pretty easy to pick up the phone and say, oh, I've got a busted water pipe, or I've got a leaky faucet. They have to stop and realize that those kinds of things are going to be their responsibility now, and by not making the proper repairs in a timely manner, they can actually hurt their property and hurt the value of their property. Mm-hmm. So they talk about things like that. We discuss those types of things. We discuss, do you pay your bills on time? Do you have a good credit history? What's your credit score look like? What's your credit report look like? Well, do you keep up with your payments now? Do you make timely payments? All of those are questions that we ask, and ask them to ask themselves to decide whether they are actually ready to buy a home.
Okay. And once I know from working with people that are buying, it's very common to find errors on your credit report. Mm-hmm. Do you give people ideas of what to do when there's errors on their credit report, or maybe there's things on their credit report that aren't errors that they need to take care of?
As far as errors, yes, we do counsel them in that. We show them how to get in contact with the credit bureau. We have sample dispute letters that help them to write a letter to the credit bureau. I encourage them to always follow up on that. In fact, I encourage someone who's starting this process with their credit to try to rebuild their credit or repair their credit for home ownership or for anything else that they might need in the future. Okay.
It seems like one of the biggest problems people have when they're trying to buy a house is getting some money together so they actually have a down payment and closing costs. Do you have advice to give people, like how to get started on saving money?
We start with something that's very simple that I call a fritter finder. And that is to help them find the money in their budget that is just frittered away. I personally have a Starbucks habit that fritters away money. We have them just carry this little piece of paper, and it doesn't have to be this piece of paper. It can be any piece of paper. It can be a spiral notebook. It can be any. It can be a Post-it note. I don't care what it is. Carry it around for a couple of weeks. Write down every time you spend money right out of your pocket or your purse. And at the end of that time period, then stop and take a look at that, add it up. You would be amazed how much money you spend on those sodas in the vending machines, the coffees, at the convenience store, the drive-through, the fast food lunches, movie rentals, lottery tickets. All of those things add up to tremendous amounts of money. So when people come to me and say to me, I don't have any money left over, I have no money to save, this is the tool that we use to help them find money that's already in their budget that they're not aware of to be able to save.
Okay, so they write it all down, and then they're usually shocked. I know I've done the same thing, and I have been shocked by how much money I spend on certain things. And then do most of the people, once they realize where they're wasting money, do most of them make changes?
They do if they're serious about this. If they're not willing to make those changes, then they have to reevaluate how important a home is to them. And it's, and not just a home, but any goal that they might have. If you do not have the discipline to give up a few of those things and to be able to save money and set money aside, then you're not going to reach those goals. You're not going to become a homeowner. And if you do, there's a good chance that you may have problems holding on to the house. So learning where that money is going, developing a consistent savings habit, and learning the types of things that you need to do to manage your budget, to keep your credit in good shape. It's important to them in every walk of life.
Well, how much do you recommend that they save in order to purchase a home?
You can probably answer that question also, but I always tell them a minimum of 10% down. I'd like to see a minimum of 10% down. Now, of course, we know that there are an awful lot of different mortgage products out there. Some of them are not good for the clients, and so they also get education as to the different type of products that are out there and which ones are the ones they need to be careful of, what the possibilities are down the road for them if they take one that's not good for them.
Yes, and we have a lot of people using FHA loans, which are pretty good. An FHA loan, you only have to have 3% down, and the closing costs are at a minimum. So maybe you would only need 6%. So on a $100,000 house, that would be $6,000, which, it's not a lot when you think about what a house can mean to you and your family over time, but you have to get a handle on the budget thing before you can actually start putting money away. And really, if people aren't putting money away, they don't need to buy a house, because then they won't have the money for the repairs. And repairs can actually eat up a lot of budget for somebody that's buying an older home. One thing I talk to people about when I know that they're completely cleaning out their bank account in order to buy a home is a home warranty. People can purchase a home warranty for about $400, or they can even negotiate for the seller to pay for it for them, and that covers all the repairs for the first year. And it does have a deductible just like any kind of an insurance policy, and you can choose what your deductible would be, whether it's $50, $75, or $100. Do you ever talk about that in your class?
We haven't, but that's very good information, and I'd like to talk to you some more about that so that I could make clients aware of that and participants in the classes aware of that. That might be a real good safety net for some of the people that I work with.
Yeah, I think it is a pretty good safety net, because there's nothing worse than emptying your bank account out to get a house and then having the furnace fail right after you move in. And, that does happen sometimes. And people do need to learn about, things about a house, not just the living in it. I know when I bought my first house, everything was done. It was in perfect condition, so I didn't do anything. And then the neighbor came over and said, Erin, you need to clean the gutters. You have trees growing in your gutters. So it's also a good idea to learn a little bit about houses and how they function and what kinds of routine maintenance needs to be done. Do you guys talk about home maintenance?
We do touch on that a little bit. I actually kind of call that a little bit, we kind of introduce that into the kind of inspection process before the actual certified inspector comes in. We tell them when they're looking at homes and trying to decide on a home that they're interested in, we teach them a little bit of inspection to do on their own. And that's checking the gutters, checking the roof, check under all the sinks and the cabinets under the sinks to be sure there's no moisture or no water under there, that you don't have a leaky faucet. That there, checks for cracks in the walls, carpets and things that may be bad. Now, some of this, is cosmetic. Some of it is, very serious to the structure of the home. But we also tell them, too, if you find things like a hole in a wall or a crack in a wall or a carpet that needs to be replaced or an oven that doesn't work, it's something that you need to think about and either put in your budget, or you can use it as a bargaining tool to ask the seller to either fix it, or as a negotiation tool with the selling price.
Right. And that brings up another point I should make. When you buy a house, it should be in overall good condition.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not in overall good condition, it'll say that on the appraisal, and then the bank will not want to give you the loan.
Right.
Some people worry enough about the condition that they want to get an inspection done before they put it under contract. And actually, I don't recommend that, because I've had this happen more than once, where I have someone who has picked out the house they want to buy, and they find an inspector, or they find someone in construction to come inspect it, but before they put it under contract and someone else comes and buys it. So I always tell people, get the inspection done after you put it under contract. Put it under contract first, otherwise somebody else might buy the house out from under you.
Right, don't lose the home.
Right. And with the inspectors, do you guys talk about putting the inspection clause in the contract to make sure that you can get inspections done? Do you guys talk about
That's
that at
what
all?
we leave up to people like you, Erin. That's why I invite in real estate agents. I don't even claim to know everything about this process, so I do rely on professionals like yourself to go into those types of details in the classes.
Okay. Well, I'll just briefly say that in the contract, whenever you're going to purchase a home and you make an offer in writing, there is a clause about the inspections. Make sure there's one in there, and make sure it provides enough time. Normally, we'll put in the contract that the buyer has 10 days to get the inspection done. That's 10 days from the time the seller accepts their offer. So that means really, as soon as it's under contract, you should be finding someone to do that. And make sure that it says in the contract that if there's a problem, you can ask the seller to fix it for you, or you can get out of the contract. It's rare that a house is going to have enough problems that you're going to need to back out. But if the roof is bad right off the bat and you can't tell it, you need to know ahead of time so you can ask the seller to go ahead and put that roof on there for you. What else do I want to say about the inspection? Well, the other thing I really want to say is, particularly with a first-time home buyer, you should go and accompany the inspector, and you should stay there the whole time, even if it's a 2-hour inspection, because if the inspector knows, and he's talked to you before the inspection, that you've never owned a home before, they will make a point to tell you things that you need to know, like cleaning the gutters, making sure your downspouts drain water away from your house to keep your foundation from having too much water up against it. They'll tell you how to change the filter in the furnace so your furnace stays cleaner and it lasts longer. So that's pretty critical to getting a good house. And what about, let's see, you touched a little bit on the loans and the saving money. You said you recommend 10% down. Do you recommend people also have some kind of an emergency fund to cover repairs?
Absolutely. We talk about what we call a reserve fund, and that's basically an emergency fund. Same thing, 2 different names, and that's to have money set aside in case something goes wrong, in case you need to do maintenance or you have a repair. Here, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, we had those terrible hailstorms, and so many people got their homes just torn up. And if granted, you have insurance on your home, but like you say, there's a deductible. You may not have $1,000 deductible just laying around in the bank if you haven't planned ahead for it. And that's what we try to encourage, is you plan ahead, be prepared for the problems, be prepared for anything that can come up, so that you don't lose value in your home, or you don't lose your home over something like that.
That's true, and that brings up another good point about the insurance policy. Before you close on your house, you need to have your insurance in place and paid for in full. And it's a good idea once you get this policy and before you close to read the policy. Because I have noticed something new insurance companies are doing is they're putting a rider on the insurance policy saying that in the case that your roof is damaged by wind, that they're not going to pay the claim unless it's more than $2,500. So make sure before closing you get that policy and you read the entire thing.
That's good advice.
Let's see, what else could we talk about? I know you mentioned there's lots of things to do. Once you put the house under contract and you're getting ready to close, there's things that you should not do.
Absolutely. Some of those things would be, don't buy a car. Don't go out and buy furniture. And that's a huge temptation for so many first-time home buyers is, oh, we've got a new house, we don't have enough furniture, they want to run out and buy furniture. Those kind of payments are going to come up right at the end and cause problems for you. You don't want to initiate any inquiries into your credit report. You don't want to take a chance of lowering your credit score. I always advise people to be upfront with your lender. If there's something in that credit report that you feel is going to cause you a problem, tell them about it, because they're going to find out anyway. They're going to see it. If you're upfront with them and you explain the situation, a lot of times it will make a difference. And that again goes back to credit repair. We advise people when you're doing credit repair and you're paying off old debts that you keep a folder and you keep documentation and receipts for everything that you've paid off, any communication you have with the credit bureaus. Because then if you go into the lender and the lender said, well, we can't do this because this showed up on your credit report, and you know you've paid that. If you've got that file in hand, you can show that lender that was paid for 6 months ago. Here's the receipt. Here are the letters that I have written to the credit bureau to try to get them to take it off the report. Makes a big difference. And like I said, always be upfront with them because they're going to find out anyway. And it can show them a little bit about, they may make a determination on what your character is at that point, whether they really want to do business with you or not if you are withholding information.
Right. And that brings up another point about the budget. I think people don't understand, one of the things they don't understand about the equation of how much house you can afford and your debt ratio, because they may wonder why once you put your house under contract you can't go out and buy furniture or a car, and it's because of the debt ratio and how much home you can afford. If you figure on a conventional loan that your house payment can be 28% of your income, you know, if you add too much other payments, you won't qualify for the whole 28% because the lender's only going to allow you to have payments of 36% of your income. So if you've qualified for your house payment, you go out and you buy a car and you buy furniture, that may be 36% of your income.
That's right.
And then you can't afford any house at all.
That's right.
Now on an FHA loan, you can go up to 29%. And on a VA loan, you can actually go up to 41% of your income for the house payment and your bills, which seems kind of amazing.
We advise to stay under 30%. So that's pretty close to the numbers you're talking about.
Yeah, yep, conventional. I'm surprised by the 41%, but
I am too.
That's what VA does. They're a little bit different.
That's a little scary.
Yeah, you can also put no money down, but you know, for some people that might be okay. For others, not so much. I have in the past made the mistake of buying more house than I could afford. And if a bank tells you you can't afford a house, don't go to another bank, because that's what I did. And then I spent 3 years sitting in a house where I had no money to do anything or go anywhere. And it's pretty miserable if the only thing you can afford is to pay your house payment.
Well, and then it becomes a burden rather than the really nice thing it should have been for you.
Yeah, that's true. And there's no point in doing it if it's a burden. You might as well rent.
Right. Like I said, I think that the best advice I can give people who are wanting to become homeowners is to sit down and decide if you really are ready to take that step. And if you're not ready to take that step, identify what is keeping you from that at this point, and then concentrate on that, whether it be your credit report, whether it be saving money, whether it be paying bills on time. Whatever it is, figure out what it is that's holding you back and overcome it. There aren't any obstacles that can't be overcome.
That's true. All right. Well, that sounds like good advice. I'm Erin Blaze from The Truth About Real Estate. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover, please email me at thetruthaboutrealestate@gmail.com. Thanks.